The Teutoburg disaster. What are the basics? What are the misconceptions? Where can you find out more information? Well, I'm going to deal with the last point first. I did 2 episodes where I had a special guest, Dr. Joe Ball, on the Ancient History Hound podcast, and it was all about Teutoburg. So it was 2 episodes. Dr. Joe Ball, absolutely fascinating, very, very insightful, excavated the site, stayed overnight at the site, or the supposed site, and I don't think I'd have the huevos to be able to do anything like that. She's got some really, really interesting stuff, talks all about it, the lead up, the characters. In the second episode, we talked specifically about what the sequence of events were, and it does get harrowing, I should warn you. Whether or not you like Rome, it's pretty rough stuff at points. Anyway, if you want to go and learn more about it or just be fascinated by what Dr. Joe Ball has to say, go and find it. Ancient History Hound podcast. You can just find it. Teutoburg disaster. Just have a scroll. So the basics then. So in AD 9, around this time of the year, a Roman force of around 3 legions was leaving a summer camp, as would be the case. And they were going to march west to just cross the Rhine and then get to their winter quarters. And that was standard procedure, nothing unusual with that. On the way, though, they decide to change course slightly. And that's done because the Roman general Varus is told by Arminius, who's a Cherusci chieftain, that there's some trouble. And what they could do is they could just stop that trouble. It's only a small tribe. Tell them off, give them a bit of a slap round the ear or whatnot, and it'll be fine. And then you haven't got to worry about anything occurring over the winter period that then you have to address in the summer. He does that, but he obviously has to change routes slightly. And on the route, they are ambushed, or rather, they are attacked over a series of 3 or 4 days. And I think that's really important. People think this is a singular event. This occurred over 3 or 4 days. And the fact that it lasted that long, got to be honest with you, it's incredible. It's a real testament to the fact that Romans were trained that well, because after the first initial attack and what happens, you think everything would have just disintegrated, and it doesn't. Now, the Romans were traveling with camp followers, so perhaps family members, that sort of a thing. So this wasn't a military force marching in the standard way you'd expect, that is to say, through alien country or foreign country, dangerous territory, expecting trouble. This is one of the criticisms they have of Varus. I think that's fair to a point, but this probably happened a lot. You weren't expecting anything bad to happen. People also say, well, hang on a sec, why is he listening to Arminius? After all, he was a barbarian chieftain. True, but he'd been taken to Rome at the age of 4 or 5, and so he was thoroughly trusted at that point. And there's a lot of criticism that comes to Varus as well, which I think is somewhat unfair, because Varus was a very competent general, very competent politician. He had been a big troubleshooter for Augustus. He'd had a CV that looked as good as any up until that point. And yes, he does get things wrong, absolutely. But the idea that he was incompetent in the first place, I think is unfair, and possibly is a good way of deflecting any criticism away from, I don't know, Augustus for ramping up, shall we say, particularly aggressive policies in that area. Or at least that's one argument that I've heard, which I think makes a lot of sense. So over the course of 3 or 4 days, you have this very long column. And again, it's worth thinking about that. You've got 3 legions or thereabouts, and these legions wouldn't be fully staffed. So again, we don't exactly know the numbers. So let's say at least 10,000 fighting men. But then you've also got the camp followers. You've also got the auxiliaries and everyone else. They're probably forming a marching column of around 10 miles or possibly more. So that's a very long column, and it's attacked at points. It's then moved and it's corralled into what is essentially a choke point next to a hill on a marsh, where the final sort of moments that anyone who's there has to endure. So it's incredibly well organized. And in fact, there's evidence to suggest that when they were corralled into this choke point or this area, that there was fortifications already pre-built. They knew they were coming, and the Germanic tribes were there waiting for them. So again, what tends to happen is that the great emphasis is placed upon how much of a disaster this was, because Varus is so stupid and he gets it wrong. And one thing that does is take away a lot of credit from the German tribes, because Rome wasn't about to do that. And if you've ever read any Livy when he deals with Hannibal, you know, he doesn't like giving Hannibal credit. He does it, but he really doesn't like it. At any point, it's more about Romans failing to win and suffering defeat than the other side being good. And if you want to know what that's like in the modern period, find a friend who supports a particular team or sporting team and is very pro that team, and ask them what happens when they get beaten. the chances are they will tell you that their team was just awful. It was never that the other team were very good. It was just theirs were awful. It's kind of a modern comparison, if you get what I mean. So that's what happens in terms of how the source is generally trying to reflect it, and contemporary sort of thinking generally tries to reflect it. It's more about the loss than the victory, which makes sense. And the victory itself isn't huge. I mean, it's iconic, but it doesn't lead to anything. And that's the really interesting thing, because this is often put up there as one of Rome's darkest days. And it's true. However, it was more a symbolic loss than anything else. Now, again, lots of people didn't come back from the woods, so I'm not discrediting them on any level. However, this wasn't something which led to Rome immediately being threatened. There was an action called against it. They were very quick to counter what was being built up there. And again, if you listen to the second episode, you'll hear us talk, or rather hear Dr. Joe Ball talking all about that. So again, it was a big symbolic defeat, but it wasn't the defeat that really was going to hamstring Rome too much. And again, that's largely the way the Roman military system worked. Anyway, there are some of the basics that I've covered, I think. If you've got any questions, stick them in the comments. And like I say, if you're still with me now, thank you very much. Go and find those 2 episodes on the Ancient History Hound podcast. Have a listen and bask in the enormous knowledge of Dr. Joe Ball, because it is really, really good to listen to. Thank you.